What is the true measure of a life? Is it the wealth we accumulate, the titles we earn, or is it something else entirely? Something quieter that we often overlook in our busy lives. Today's story is not about the success the world sees, but about the silent, invisible price that is sometimes paid to achieve it. In the heart of a city that glittered with ambition, the Elysian Towers stood as a monument to wealth and success. Its lobby was a symphony of polished marble, hushed whispers, and the faint, expensive scent of perfume. And in the center of this world, yet entirely separate from it, sat Omar. For 30 years, he had been the night security guard. He was a man carved from silence, his face a roadmap of wrinkles that rarely rearranged themselves into a smile. His uniform was always immaculate, his posture always straight, but his eyes held a distant, sorrowful gaze, as if watching a memory only he could see. The residents of the Elysian Towers, a collection of bankers, surgeons, and entrepreneurs, saw him as part of the furniture, a necessary but invisible fixture. They didn't know that 30 years ago, Omar had been a firefighter, a hero who ran into flames while others ran away. They didn't know that he had lost his own wife and daughter in a fire he couldn't reach in time. After that day, the silence became his refuge, and the night shift his escape from a world that was too bright, too loud, too full of families that reminded him of the one he had lost. He chose to guard others, a silent penance for the ones he couldn't save. The routine of Omar's silent world was disrupted by the arrival of the Al-Fassi family in apartment 7B. They were a young couple, but it was their 7-year-old daughter, Lena, who was different. She had eyes that sparkled with a curiosity that the building's sterile luxury hadn't yet dulled. On her first night, as her parents spoke to the concierge, Lena walked directly up to Omar's imposing desk. She held out a piece of paper. On it was a crayon drawing of a giant, smiling sun with stick-figure arms, waving. Omar stared at the drawing. For a moment, the bright yellow of the crayon seemed to pierce through the gray fog of his memories. He looked at Lena's expectant face, her wide, trusting smile. He didn't smile back. He had forgotten how. But he gave a slow, deliberate nod. He took the paper, folded it with immense care, and placed it in the inside pocket of his jacket, right next to his heart. This became their ritual. Every night, Lena would bring him something. A shiny pebble from the park, a daisy with a slightly wilted stem, a half-eaten chocolate bar. She would tell him about her day in a torrent of words, about her teacher, her lost tooth, her dream of having a puppy. Omar never spoke back, but he always listened. And every night, after she had gone, he would take out the drawing of the sun and look at it before starting his rounds. That small crayon sun was the only light in his long, dark night. Not everyone was charmed by this silent interaction. Mr. Fareed, a resident of the penthouse and a man whose wealth was matched only by his arrogance, saw Omar as a symbol of everything he despised: age, poverty, and weakness. He made his displeasure known. "Management should hire someone younger, more alert," he'd complain loudly at residents' meetings. "This one looks like he's asleep with his eyes open. He's a liability." The complaints escalated. Mr. Fareed accused Omar of losing a package of his, an expensive watch. He claimed Omar was rude for not greeting him with a smile. He even filed a formal complaint when he saw Omar accepting the piece of candy from Lena, calling it unprofessional conduct. Each complaint was a small cut, a reminder to Omar of his place in their world. He absorbed them all in silence, his face an unreadable mask. But the weight of the injustice pressed down on him. One evening, the smell of burnt toast wafted from the third floor, triggering a localized smoke detector. It was a minor incident, a forgotten slice of bread. But Omar followed protocol perfectly. He was on the floor in under a minute, assessed the situation, and reset the alarm, his movements calm and efficient. Mr. Fareed, however, used the incident as ammunition. It took him ages to respond. He lied to the building manager the next day. What if it had been a real fire? We would all be in danger with this relic in charge. The manager, under pressure, gave Omar a formal warning. I know you did your job, Omar, but you know how Mr. Fareed is. Just try to be more visible. Omar simply nodded. That night he felt the old, familiar chill of helplessness. He was a guardian no one trusted.
Weeks later, the real test came. It was a bitterly cold night, and a faulty wire in the building's basement sparked, then smoldered, then ignited. The fire grew with a hungry, silent speed, climbing through the ventilation shafts. Omar was on his rounds in the West Wing when the main alarms shrieked to life. Panic erupted, doors flew open, and terrified residents poured into the hallways. Omar's training kicked in instantly. He was no longer just a security guard. He was a firefighter again. He began directing the flow of people towards the emergency exits, his voice so rarely used, now a calm, commanding force in the chaos. Then, a horrifying realization struck him. As he glanced at the main alarm panel, a single red light was blinking. Fault, East Wing. The alarm hadn't sounded there, and in the East Wing, on the 7th floor, was Lena. While the stampede of residents flowed out of the building, Omar turned and ran against the tide. He ran back into the belly of the beast. The air was thick with acrid smoke that clawed at his throat. The heat was a physical blow. He pulled his jacket over his mouth and climbed the stairs, his 60-year-old lungs screaming in protest, but his heart pounding with a single desperate purpose. He hammered on the doors of the East Wing, his voice hoarse. Fire! Wake up! Fire! He reached apartment 7B. The door handle was hot to the touch. He pounded on it, shouting Lena's name. There was no answer. He didn't waste another second. He braced himself and threw his shoulder against the door. The wood groaned. He did it again, a lifetime of grief and regret fueling his strength. The lock splintered and the door flew open. The apartment was filled with a thick, black smoke. He found Lena's parents disoriented in the living room. "The girl! Where is the girl?" he choked out. They pointed towards her bedroom. Omar crawled on the floor, beneath the worst of the smoke, and found Lena huddled in her bed, coughing and crying. He wrapped her in her blanket, scooped her into his arms, and held her tight. "I have you," he whispered, the first words of comfort he had spoken in decades. He guided the family out, shielding Lena with his own body as a piece of the burning ceiling crashed down where they had just been standing. Outside, in the flashing red and blue lights of the fire trucks, the residents stood huddled in blankets, their faces smudged with soot and fear. They watched in stunned silence as the old, invisible guard emerged from the smoke-filled entrance, a small child held securely in his arms. He walked directly to Lena's parents and placed her safely with them. Mr. Fareed stood frozen, his expensive silk pajamas looking absurd in the face of such raw courage. He watched as the fire captain clapped Omar on the shoulder, calling him a hero. He saw the looks of awe and gratitude on the faces of his neighbors. For the first time, he saw Omar not as a lowly guard, but as a man of immense stature. Lena, safe but still scared, broke away from her parents and ran to Omar, wrapping her small arms around his legs. "You saved me," she cried. Omar looked down at her.
He saw her tear-streaked face, her complete and utter trust in him. And he thought of the daughter he had lost. This time, he had been there. This time, he had been fast enough. A profound, wrenching sob escaped his chest, a release of 30 years of pent-up grief. Then, something miraculous happened. The deep lines on his face shifted, and a slow, genuine smile spread across his lips. It was a smile of pain, of relief, of redemption. The next day, the Elysian Towers was a different place. The residents greeted Omar with newfound respect. They brought him coffee. They asked his name. Mr. Farid approached him at his desk, his head bowed. I was wrong, Omar," he stammered. "I am sorry." Omar simply nodded, accepting the apology without a word. His validation didn't come from them. It came from a small crayon drawing of a sun that he kept in his pocket, and from the memory of a little girl's hug. He was still the silent guardian, but now everyone in the building knew his true worth. And sometimes, when he looked at the children playing in the lobby, he would allow himself a small, quiet smile. He had found his purpose again, not in guarding a building, but in protecting its heart.